I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.
Ms. Maxwell, did you at any time play any role in Jeffrey Epstein's activities involving the recruitment, grooming, or trafficking of young women or girls?
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.
Yep, that's pretty much what happened yesterday when Ghislaine Maxwell chose to stay very tight-lipped in front of a congressional committee investigating Jeffrey Epstein. The question is why? For the convicted sex trafficker who already said so much to the Department of Justice last summer, is she hiding something, or is she doing something far more strategic? Especially now that members of Congress can review unredacted Epstein files and are making quite the wave over what they're finding. Oh, and this on top of a new revelation that the president may have spoken to the police about Epstein. So much to get to. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. By the way, talking about the Epstein case and how it rapidly develops every second, staying on top of the news today is so important. But the problem is there's so much media bias. Who knows what to believe? That's why I want to introduce you to our sponsor, Straight Arrow News. Why? Straight Arrow News is a personalized news platform that gives readers fact-based journalism to inform and build trust. You know what? Their Media Mist tool, it shows readers headlines that are not seen on mainstream outlets, providing useful commentary that cuts through all of that sensational spin. And their site and their app, it points out all this bias with a media landscape tool to group sources by political leaning for full transparency. So look, if you're ready for a better way to get the news, go to san.com/sidebar or just click the link in my description. This is Straight Arrow News. Skip the drama, get the facts. Welcome back to trustworthy journalism.
As expected, Ghislaine Maxwell took the fifth and refused to answer any questions. This obviously is very disappointing. We had many questions to ask about the crimes she and Epstein committed, as well as questions about potential co-conspirators. We sincerely want to get to the truth of the American people and justice for the survivors. That's what this investigation is about.
Yeah, as covered in that C-SPAN clip, you have Representative James Comer explaining how Ghislaine Maxwell, you know, the woman who was convicted of sex trafficking minors to deceased financier Jeffrey Epstein, and she was sentenced to 20 years in prison, she chose to plead the fifth when asked and questioned during a sworn deposition in front of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. They had been investigating Jeffrey Epstein, meaning invoking her right against self-incrimination. Now, she was being deposed over video while she's currently housed at a prison camp in Texas. This was through a subpoena to provide testimony. And look, while it is her right to do this, why? Why did she not provide information about what she knows? Well, let's hear directly from her.
Ms. Maxwell, were you a close friend and confidant of Jeffrey Epstein?
I would like to answer your question, but on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer this question and any related questions. My habeas petition is pending in the Southern District of New York. I therefore invoke my right to silence under the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
Let the record reflect that Ms. Maxwell has invoked the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. Ms. Maxwell, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.
Ms. Maxwell, did you at any time play any role in Jeffrey Epstein's activities involving the recruitment, grooming, or trafficking of young women or girls?
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.
Let the record reflect that Ms. Maxwell has invoked the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. Ms. Maxwell, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.
Ms. Maxwell, have you ever coerced, directed, or otherwise instructed any young woman or girl to provide sexual favors to Mr. Epstein or any other individual?
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.
Let the record reflect that Ms. Maxwell has invoked the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. Ms. Maxwell, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.
Ms. Maxwell, Can you please provide us with all the names of other additional co-conspirators to the crimes perpetuated by you and Jeffrey Epstein?
I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to silence.
And it pretty much went like that. Now, on one hand, as she said, her attorneys may have told her, look, don't say anything right now because any admission or denial could affect your pending habeas corpus petition being heard. That's a very special kind of legal filing. It's requesting a new trial or having her conviction or sentence thrown out. Slightly different than an appeal. As I mentioned on a previous sidebar, she basically argued that she discovered new evidence, including what her attorney said were the existence of secret settlements with 25 men that she claims were hidden from her and her team, and if she knew about it, maybe she would have called these people as witnesses at trial. Now, her attorney actually requested that her testimony in front of this committee be delayed until the habeas petition was resolved. Actually, listen to what her attorney David Marcus said yesterday in a prepared opening statement that was obtained by Politico. Here's a portion. If this committee and the American public truly want to hear the unfiltered truth about what happened, there is a straightforward path. Ms. Maxwell is prepared to speak fully and honestly if granted clemency by President Trump. And clemency could be, a commutation of her sentence. It could be a pardon, a reprieve of some kind. You're basically relaxing the punishment or the conviction in some way. So she looks like she wants to get out of prison. Quote, only she can provide the complete account. Some may not like what they hear, but the truth matters. For example, both President Trump and President Clinton are innocent of any wrongdoing. Ms. Maxwell alone can explain why, and the public is entitled to hear that explanation. By the way, he had previously written in a letter to the committee on January 21st, quote, she welcomes the opportunity to share the truth and to dispel the many misconceptions and misstatements that have plagued this case from the beginning. And you had House Oversight Chair Representative Comer indicating outside in the hallway that after listening to the survivors, he doesn't believe she should be granted immunity nor clemency because she is a very bad person. But Comer also said, this isn't done yet. They have more people scheduled to testify, including the Clintons. Take a look at this clip from C-SPAN.
We can confirm we have 5 more depositions in the book scheduled for the Epstein investigation. On February 18th, Lex Wexner, who is a financial client of Epstein and I believe the former CEO of Victoria's Secret. February 26th, we have former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. February 27th, former President Bill Clinton. March 11th, Richard Kahn, Epstein's accountant, and March 19th, Darren Endike, Epstein's lawyer. So we will continue to move forward and try to get answers for the American people.
And remember, even if Maxwell were to be granted protection, can she even be believed? Is she going to say whatever she needs to say? Remember, she was awfully chatty back in July of last year when she spoke with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche in a 2-day interview. So this is what we could imagine she would testify to if she was granted some sort of clemency from the president. Let's play part of that exchange from last summer.
Do you have recollection of you ever recruiting a masseuse from Mar-a-Lago Spa to go give a private massage to Mr. Epstein?
I've never recruited a masseuse from Mar-a-Lago for that, as far as I remember. I can't ever recollect doing that.
Do you remember specific names of individuals who did send letters or who did contribute?
It's been so long. I want to tell you that I don't remember.
Did you ever observe President Trump receive a massage?
Never.
Do you know whether, for example, President Clinton ever received a massage?
I don't believe he did.
Always an issue of her credibility, especially considering she was brought up on a perjury charge back in the day for allegedly lying during a 2016 deposition. Okay, you couple all of that with what happened yesterday. So the day of her testimony was the same day that members of Congress could go to the DOJ, the Department of Justice, and look at the unredacted Epstein files. This has been a bipartisan effort, okay? You have Representatives Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna, 2 different sides of the aisle. They claimed that after reviewing the files, it was clear that men are being protected here. Massie said, quote, what I saw that bothered me were the names of at least 6 men that have been redacted that are likely incriminated by their inclusion in these files. It took some digging to find them. I would like to give the DOJ a chance to say they made a mistake and over-redacted and let them unredact those men's names. That would probably be the best way to do it. And according to CNN, the DOJ, seemingly under this bipartisan pressure, did unredact some names. But I will tell you, you even saw this back and forth between Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and Massie, all on X yesterday. So Massie, for example, posted, This is well-known retired CEO. DOJ should unredact this. Why did they redact it? And then you had Deputy AG Todd Blanche respond, the document you cite has numerous victim names. We have just unredacted Les Wexner's name from this document, but his name already appears in the files thousands of times. DOJ is hiding nothing. How about this one? At Representative Rokan and I just spent 2 hours at DOJ viewing the mostly unredacted Epstein files. 4 of the 18 redacted names on this document are men born before 1970. DOJ needs to explain why they are redacted unless they were just randoms in a lineup. And then you had Todd Blanche responding, the document you cite has numerous victim names. We have just unredacted all non-victim names from this document. The DOJ is committed to transparency. Now, to add context here, okay, so the DOJ was permitted to do the following under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, right? The law that compelled the DOJ to turn over all of the Epstein files in their possession. So it says the Attorney General may withhold or redact the segregable portions of records that, quote, contain personally identifiable information of victims, depict or contain child sexual abuse materials, would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution, provided that such withholding is narrowly tailored and temporary, depict or contain images of death, physical abuse, or injury of any person, or contain information specifically authorized under criteria established by an executive order to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. But I want you to listen, for example, to what Jamie Raskin said yesterday in this C-SPAN clip.
For example, Mr. Wexner, his name was redacted from a government document. And I couldn't understand the logic of that. He was not a victim, and his name has appeared other places. Now, the Department of Justice has not sent forth its so-called privilege log, so it's not explained yet why there might be certain redactions that have been made. I saw one document which was an email that was sent by Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell, which was the forward of an email that he had received from some of his lawyers, giving an account of a conversation between Epstein lawyers and Trump lawyers and others about what had taken place during that 2009 period. It was during the period of the 2009 investigation. And Epstein's lawyers synopsized and quoted Trump as saying that that Jeffrey Epstein was not a member of his club at Mar-a-Lago, but he was a guest at Mar-a-Lago, and he had never been asked to leave. And that was redacted for some indeterminate, inscrutable reason. I know it seems to be at odds with some things that President Trump has been saying recently about how he had kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club or asked him to leave.
And you heard the name before, but Les Wexner is the retail guru behind Victoria's Secret, a known Epstein associate. Epstein apparently managed his finances at one point, but he's denied any involvement in the past. And by the way, I will also say there was an internal FBI document that suggested, quote, there is little evidence regarding his involvement. Now, I actually did a sidebar yesterday on how the Epstein files reveal all of these internal FBI memos and communications that suggest there's not actually any concrete evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to other men. So the question is, what is going on here? There seems to be a disparity. Again, is Maxwell hiding something? In a hearing before Congress last year, you had FBI Director Kash Patel emphasize this, saying there was no evidence of this trafficking. Quote, if there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals, and the information we have, again, is limited. Now, I got to talk about the President Trump of it all, because this came out, too, yesterday in a very big way. So according to an FBI report, Trump seemingly called a Florida police chief back in the early 2000s to talk about Jeffrey Epstein. The document says, quote, Donald Trump told Redacted that he threw Epstein out of his club. Trump called the PBPD to tell him, thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this. Trump told him people in New York knew Epstein was disgusting. Trump said Maxwell was Epstein's operative. Quote, she is evil and to focus on her. Trump told Redacted that he was around Epstein once when teenagers were present, and Trump, quote, got the hell out of there. Trump was one of the very first people to call when people found out that they were investigating Epstein. Now, the name of this person that was interviewed is redacted, but based on information provided in the report, CNBC identified the interviewee, and other outlets I believe did as well, as former Palm Beach Police Chief Michael Reeder. And he had retired by the time the FBI sat down with him in 2019. This is after Epstein had died in his prison cell or his jail cell. And it's interesting because this account arguably corroborates what Epstein apparently wrote author Michael Wolff in an email, which came out in a prior release. Quote, redacted worked at Mar-a-Lago. She was the one that accused Prince Andrew. Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. By the way, at the same time, Trump has denied knowing about what Epstein was up to, and there was at one point he even said he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago for stealing employees. So the bottom line is, what do we make of all this? Is this what Maxwell was allegedly afraid to talk about? Okay, let's discuss. Let me bring in Dave Aronberg, former Palm Beach County State Attorney, to talk more about this. Dave, always good to see you. Okay, let's start with Maxwell. Did she invoke the Fifth to protect her from jeopardizing her habeas corpus petition, or is she hiding information?
Well, I think both. Two things can be true at the same time, Jesse. First, she does have an appeal out there, a habeas appeal. Her direct appeal was rejected by the U.S. Supreme Court. I don't think she has much of a shot on her habeas appeal, but she does have the right to invoke the Fifth. But also at the same time, she wants to protect herself and others from what she knows. She has still to this day never revealed what she knows. She has always denied that she and Jeffrey Epstein ever did anything inappropriate. That's why, by the way, she was charged with perjury in the first Trump administration for lying under oath that she never saw Jeffrey Epstein engage in anything inappropriate. So she is a professional liar. We should not believe anything she ever says. And here she is, not just trying to protect herself, but also trying to ensure that her best chance of getting released from prison, which would be a pardon or a commutation by President Trump, is still out there. She did not want to answer any questions about Donald Trump, and she did not want to respond to any question with the Fifth. So, for example, she took the Fifth at the beginning, saying, I'm taking the Fifth, I'm not answering any questions. She did not want the embarrassment of being asked, did you ever see Donald Trump engaged in anything criminal with Jeffrey Epstein? And her respond with, I take the Fifth. That's a bad look.
Why should we expect that she would say anything different than what she said to Todd Blanche, where she said, there was no massages. I didn't see the president get a massage. I don't think Clinton did anything wrong. If she's granted some sort of clemency, if she's granted immunity in her testimony, if she got all the protection in the world, do you anticipate she would say anything different?
Well,
implicate people and implicate these unknown people and all this? Do you think she would say anything different?
Well, she talks outside both sides of her mouth. In her habeas petition, she said that there were 25 individuals that she knows of who cut civil deals.
I don't know if she knows the identity of them. She just knows that, right? She said there was 25 people who cut settlements, and she would have called them as witnesses had she known about it. I don't know if she knows the official identities. Maybe?
How would she call them as witnesses if she didn't know the identity, right? I mean, it's hard to believe that Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the devil's accomplice, wouldn't know the identity of the alleged people that these girls were trafficked to. So remember, she was convicted of sex trafficking. Who were the recipients of the sex trafficking? Was it just Jeffrey Epstein? So she knows names. Now, whether she'll reveal them or not, she's never done it before, but she wants to save herself. So she said that, her lawyer said that she would tell all if she could get clemency from Trump. She will exonerate Trump. She will exonerate Bill Clinton. She will say everything for the first time what she knows. So she's just in it for herself. She knows information, and she's trying to dangle that as the carrot to get herself released.
Do you think that'll be do you think that's a realistic possibility? Because I played it before. You know, Comer says she's basically a really bad person, that she's been called a monster. You hear this bipartisan appeal where both sides are saying she should not be granted any protection whatsoever. She's a monster. She's a convicted sex trafficker. Without getting too political, do you think that there is a possibility she could be granted a pardon, some sort of clemency, and she then speaks freely and testifies, and whether it's in a public forum or in a deposition that may or may not be released, do you think that that is a possibility here?
I think it's a real possibility she's granted a pardon or a commutation of her sentence on Trump's way out of office. Remember, she did a 9-hour interview with Todd Blanche, and after that interview, she was transferred to a minimum security prison where she was not entitled to go. She, as a sex offender, as a convicted sex trafficker, is not allowed to be at this facility. And not only is she at this facility, but she gets puppies, she gets extra toilet paper, she gets treated really well there by the warden of the prison. So she's already gotten a benefit. Now, could I see her getting a pardon or commutation if she says the right things or doesn't say anything? Yeah, I could see that on Trump's way out of office. Not before then, though, because this would be such a huge political disaster to do so. Now, with that said, there is still no evidence that I've seen that Trump has engaged in criminal activity here. We've seen these allegations without any corroboration. And so it's not fair to say that she's just going to, spill the beans and all these people are going to be charged. The Department of Justice has said there's not enough evidence to charge any new co-conspirators, but she does know a whole lot of information that she has never given up. So will she give it up after she gets a pardon? I don't think so. I think that she just takes these secrets to the grave with her.
Well, let me ask you about this idea that she has secret information about co-conspirators, accomplices, or just people connected to this in some way, because let's just talk about what happened yesterday. We did a whole sidebar and how basically what you just said, the files reveal the FBI, through case summaries and communications, basically said there's no evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to other powerful men. There's no videos, there's no photos. And then you see this flurry of activity from Capitol Hill yesterday, where you had members of Congress who could go in, look at the unredacted files. Can two things be true at once? Can they say, hey, we looked at the unredacted files, we believe there are men who were involved in this. We do believe that there were men that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked girls to, but at the same time, the FBI could be correct in their conclusion to state, or prosecutors would be correct in their conclusion to state, we don't think there was enough evidence to support charges. We don't think there was enough evidence to support a crime. I mean, can two things be true at once? The members saying members of Congress's narrative from what they viewed and what the feds say.
Yes, if you parse the Fed's words, because they did seem to indicate with Kash Patel's testimony that there was no evidence against other co-conspirators. Not that we have evidence, but not enough to bring charges. Now, that would be a little different. But I do think two things can be true at the same time, where you have the names in the files, but you don't have enough evidence to bring criminal charges. It is hard to bring criminal charges in an old case like this. Memories fade, victims like Virginia Giuffre die, the evidence spoils, you need corroboration. You're dealing with very powerful individuals who have a lot of money, and so you got to have the goods if you're going to bring the case. But if there's the goods, then they should bring the case. And the only way for us to know if there's the goods is by releasing the Epstein files. And right now there are 3 million pages that continue to be withheld. So I see what the members of Congress are saying, and that's why, as long as there is a lack of transparency, this controversy, this scandal will never go away.
Do you think the DOJ over-redacted for maybe good reasons out of an abundance of caution, or is there a cover-up?
I think the priority for this administration is to protect the president. And I think that they are really looking closely at every document to make sure there's not even any smoke out there. And again, we don't know of any evidence that he committed any crimes, but Trump doesn't want his name to be put out there in the same sentence as Jeffrey Epstein. Even though we have seen it in the files, I think that the number one goal for the investigators here is to make sure that Trump's name is redacted whenever possible. And so I don't think we're going to see this before Trump leaves office. I think the files will continue to be withheld and redacted. And the way they've gone about it is that they have leaned into the exceptions. For example, there is an exception in the Epstein Files Transparency Act that says that you don't have to release the documents if it relates to an ongoing criminal investigation. So the Trump administration started a new criminal investigation, and they're leaning into that and say, hey, we can't release the files. I don't know if that's in good faith or not. It'll be up to a judge ultimately. Also, in the Epstein Files Transparency Act, it says nothing about withholding documents based on work product privilege or deliberative process privilege. And the administration is leaning into that, saying, hey, you said nothing about these two exemptions, so we're going to assume we can take those privileges. And a lot of these documents relate to work product and deliberative process, internal communications, and they have redacted or withheld all of them. So they're leaning into exemptions that may or may not exist under the act.
And to be clear, this privilege log that they're supposed to supply to Congress, these are the reasons for the redactions. How much transparency will that provide in terms of why they made redactions? What would that tell us?
They'll tell us the subject matter, what's the area and of the documents, like what does it pertain to, and why did you withhold it? Right now, the administration has not turned over that privilege log. They're required to under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. They have not done so already. That will be very revealing, but you got to get the document first.
Well, I also have to push back a little bit in this idea that is it all to, I know the narrative, it's all to protect the president, but you heard Jamie Raskin say, why is Les Wexner's name redacted when he's already a known Jeffrey Epstein associate? Not saying he engaged in any criminal wrongdoing, not saying he had knowledge of it, he's denied it. But if we're talking in this bigger conversation, is Maxwell hiding a secret about big players, about big people? Why are you seeing, you heard Massey say there's these names of, what, 6 individuals that should be or that were redacted. It seems bigger than just the president. It seems that there might be other people, and it does become a question. Again, were their names redacted because there was sensitive information, whether it was regarding an ongoing investigation, personally identifiable information, something of that nature? Or is there this need to protect them for nefarious reasons, or a need to protect them because they don't want to unnecessarily be, logged into this if they have nothing to do with it? Again, it's so confusing because we're getting this mixed messaging, and it's also very difficult to go on social media and make sense of what people are saying and what conclusions people are drawing about it. You tell me.
You're not supposed to protect these alleged co-conspirators at all. In fact, under the Epstein Files Transparency Act,
well, if they're co-conspirators, if they're, let's say they're just, I don't know, they're just mentioned in some way. I mean,
there's no exception. There's no exception for embarrassment. In fact, the Epstein Files Transparency Act says the opposite. It said that embarrassment is not an excuse. You have to release the names. The only names you cannot release are the names of the victims. So unless these names are victims as well as co-conspirators, they should be released. And that's what the public is clamoring for. That's what the members of Congress are saying. Why are we redacting these 6 names? Unless it's someone who was a victim and a participant, then their name should be redacted. But that's not what the members of Congress are saying. They're saying these are all powerful men. Many of them are international players. Some of them are local in the United States, and we should be releasing them according to the act. The law says you cannot keep those names secret. And the members of Congress may have to go to the floor of Congress to speak the names, because if they do so, they have a privilege under the law, the speech and debate clause of the Constitution, that gives them the ability to read names without getting sued. The victims don't want to read names because they could get sued for it. So you may say, it may not be right to release names of people who have not been charged with a crime. You're going to be dragging them through the mud in releasing their names. But the law says that if they're in the files, you have to release their names, even if it's embarrassing to them, unless they are victims.
Circle back to the president. It also came out, again, as we talk about Maxwell, whether or not she has any secrets. The president had this conversation back in the day with a Florida police chief, apparently. This is according to a FBI report, where he was kind of glad that Epstein was being investigated, said that knew Epstein was disgusting. Thank goodness you've been stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this. And it's interesting to hear that, because, again, there's been mixed messaging about whether Trump threw him out of the club and when he threw him out and what he knew. How do we factor that into this new development?
This shows the need for more transparency. I mean, there could be exculpatory evidence in there that does exonerate Trump. If there's evidence in the files that Trump called the police chief of Palm Beach and said, you got to get this guy, he's the worst, he's been committing these crimes, that's something that should be produced. And that's why, for those of us who are legal observers, I just want the stuff to get out there. Now that the law passed, this stuff should be released. Now, remember, this is not grand jury material. There didn't need to be a law to be passed for these files to be released. Trump, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, they campaigned on releasing the files. They were out there for years saying, release the files, this will prove a Democratic conspiracy. And now they're in power. They say, oh, nothing to see here. And that's why even members of Trump's own base are concerned that the stuff they've been promised is now being withheld. And stuff like the one you just said, where the reports are that there's a police chief that said Trump tried to blow the whistle on Epstein. If that's the case, that should be out there, and that should be discussed and debated in the court of public opinion.
If Maxwell's habeas petition is denied, okay, if she loses that, what can we expect from her?
Continued silence and an attempt to get a pardon or commutation by Trump. That is her only way she'll be let out of prison before her 2-decade prison sentence expires. And so she's going to go all in on that. And Trump may well give her a pardon or commutation because he appreciated what she said to Todd Blanche in that 9-hour interview where she never took the fifth once, not once. And yet when she testified before Congress...
Why not in that interview? I mean, she was still trying to appeal it, still trying to fight her conviction.
She didn't take the fifth once because that interview was not about getting information from her about co-conspirators or what really happened. It was to exonerate President Trump. And she knew that, and she played ball, and she gave up everything that they wanted, which was, I've never seen Trump act inappropriately. I don't know anything. And she spoke for 9 hours without saying much at all. That transcript is pretty hollow. And maybe she's telling the truth about Trump. I don't know. But I do know that she never invoked the fifth once, whereas in front of Congress, she invoked the fifth on every question. So it tells you that she only wants people to know what she wants them to know for her own purposes because she wants something in return for it.
So it sounds to me like whatever she ends up saying, that is not how we're going to get to the truth of the matter. It seems to me, got to go back to the files, got to see what this unredacted information is. Let's see what Congress will look into. Although I will tell you, the way that they can view these files and the kind of limitations, and there's only a limited amount of computers, I don't know how they're going to be able to review all this and be able to relay this information. So it's kind of a difficult situation. But Dave Aronberg, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. You got your Substack people can check out too. Where is it? What is it?
Thank you, Jesse. At Dave Aronberg, DaveAronberg. Check me out on Substack. I do a lot of videos like this and appreciate being on your awesome show, Jesse.
Thank you. How did I not know that was the name of it? It's like the, oh my gosh, at Dave Aronberg. How could I not remember that? Dave, good to see you. Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're also up on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday at 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody.